Speaking moistly, keep 2 meters apart. Speaking moistly.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our usual Tuesday afternoon edition of Speaking Moistly. Is it actually Tuesday? On Tuesday, with me, as usual, Greg, the
We're
better
doing
of the
it.
two hosts. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm actually drinking decaf coffee again.
Holy,
So,
I'm gonna start getting decaf coffee advertisements. I always get
oh,
alternate coffee advertisements after our show because we
yeah.
talk about them. I'm glad you're back on the juice. I've never gotten into the coffee craze of things, but I don't know. Who knows?
This
Maybe
this
I'll
this
maybe I'll
coffee says it's caffeine free, although I've heard that most decaf has some
has
caffeine in it.
caffeine. Yep,
So,
it's like tea.
eh,
How can they
anyway.
say it's caffeine free? Caffeine free with only 10 grams of caffeine per serving. You're like, oh, that's close to caffeine free. Well, advertise. It's like I don't know if the government regulates it, they do a terrible
Yeah.
job and things like that.
Mostly peaceful. Mostly caffeine free.
Yes. So we haven't talked in a while. There's been a lot of things that have happened since the last time we talked. I can't even remember the last time we talked. Danielle Smith is the premier of Alberta, and she seems to be okay. Pierre Poilievre seems to be absent, and everybody in the House of Commons seems to be really focused on Iran. Justin Trudeau marched with an Iranian freedom parade, but
Mhm.
freedom in Canada is spelled free DUMB for some strange reason. I'm not sure.
They're
The
passing Bill C-11, or they're trying to, and
Bill
it's just like
C-11, yeah.
brutal, man. Brutal.
Yeah, and so there's been a lot of stuff going on. Do you want to start on C11 or let's go there? We can talk
Yeah,
about
yeah, sure. So I saw on my YouTube recommended feed there's some gaming channel, never seen him before. He looks like some Indian guy, got 3 million subscribers, and his video's like, I might have to leave Canada, like kind of a clickbaity title, but like it's a rant of him like, hey, I hate politics, I don't like to talk about this, but like BC11 is so bad. Like, it's like somebody who does not care about politics at all, but he's like, this legislation is so bad that I am like forced to make a video about Canadian politics and just how loony it is up here. But I was really happy to see people like that doing stuff. And just to kind of add to the same point, I got an ad fed to me on Facebook that was from an ad purchased by YouTube/Google that said, hey, keep your feed yours, like stop Bill C-11. This legislation is so bad that even the censorious, even the overbearing YouTube is like, yo, bro, like this is
this is a little
this
bit
is
much.
too much. And
Yeah.
it's just too bad because, in typical Canadian politics fashion, we have all of these bureaucrats and all of these establishment types who have their agenda items that they're trying to push through. And that's all they ever talk about, all this fluffy stuff of why this legislation is going to be great. And then all these people who actually care are asking these questions, breaking it down, and they're not answering these very valid questions of how unclear the legislation is. And then because our news media does not operate the way it should, it's, no one really cares, no one talks about it. It's just kind of like, the conservative sphere online freaking out about it, well, everyone else is kind of in the dark.
Yeah, and well, there are people who are communicating, as you said, YouTube and Google are talking about this, but they've forced this stuff through in Australia. United Kingdom doesn't really have any speech protection laws, and I've seen people there arrested for posting something somebody didn't like. Somebody reshared a meme, and then the person who reshared the meme got arrested, but the person who originally
So,
created it didn't.
so this is different though. I think this is a little different because
Yeah.
C-11 is not the same like hate speech stuff that they're kind of planning on pushing through. C-11 is still very messed up in that they want to get a hold of big tech algorithms. Like I think the closest thing to this might be in Australia, where they do something weird. Facebook does something weird with like news organizations there, where they have to like tax the news organizations to use Facebook, or the Facebook. Yeah, the news organizations tries to tax Facebook or something like this. But this is not to do with specific censorship of speech and like getting arrested for a meme and that sort of thing. That's another piece of legislation that they've been working on that is, yeah, terrifying. And you're right, does exist in the UK, where people can show up at your door if you make fun of Justin Trudeau or what have you. But no, C-11 is, and everyone's been talking about this already, it's creepy because it's unclear. And their argument to support the legislation is, well, we'll figure it out later. Just trust us, bro. Like that's literally their argument.
And
And
there aren't any
yeah,
citizens calling for C11. This is just parliamentarians telling us that we need to have
More,
C11
no,
for
and
our
more,
safety, comrade.
and more importantly, it's not only our citizens not asking for it, but YouTube content creators and artists are definitely not asking for it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, you like, no, actually, this is gives me the no feeling. Like, please stop doing this.
Please stop touching my freedom there.
How did I amass my following? How did I amass like the success I've had on big tech? Not with the help of the Canadian government at all. You guys haven't helped me get here. So why the hell do I think that this unspecific legislation is going to help me?
I might even hazard to say that the Canadian government might be stifling my growth. They might be preventing me from growing. I don't know for sure.
Well, let's segue into Twitter here. I know we didn't talk about this beforehand, but apparently Elon Musk is finding some pretty interesting stuff with his new purchase as he kind of like, gets comfortable at Twitter there. And I didn't actually fact check this one, but I heard this headline or somebody shared something that essentially, oh yeah, they have like monthly meetings with the federal government at Twitter.
There's a guy named Dr. Shiva, and Dr. Shiva brought a lawsuit against the federal government in the United States. No, excuse me. He brought a lawsuit against Twitter in the United States, and Twitter said, well, you can't really sue us without understanding how this process works. We're acting at the behest of the federal government, and the federal government were named as defendants in the suit. So I've known about this dashboard only on Twitter. I haven't had any confirmation on any other big tech, but you can generalize. You can look at that and say, if the government has a dashboard on Twitter, they probably have a dashboard on Facebook where they can say, what's that guy's name? Any comedian or whoever they want to silence, they just
who's tweeting about Trudeau today?
Dankula. I was thinking Dankula.
Yeah, Dankula. Yeah.
Or yeah, put in Trudeau, and does anybody calling him potato headed Justin Trudeau? Ban that guy, right? Like, so they have those platforms, they've had those dashboards, and we've known it for a while. Now there's ironclad proof. There's lots and lots of proof. And is anything going to happen? I think they're going to try and silence anybody from talking about it with C11. They're just going to say, forget it. We own the whole internet. You're not allowed to talk about that anymore. Censorship doesn't exist in Canada. You're free. Go away.
So, I mean, that would be the absolute worst interpretation of the C11 legislation, because if it hasn't been changed too much since Bill C10, essentially they want to take the CRTC and then apply it to everything, which is for most people, it won't. The major impact they will have is browsing discoverability, because they're going to be like, oh yeah, this isn't Canadian enough, so we're not going to show it to you. The whole thing is so absurd. But I was going to say, if you're just regularly posting on social media and you're not making money from it, then it's not really that big a deal. However, when you get into the territory of being someone like Rebel News, even someone like myself, I don't make a whole lot of money, but I still make some money off of big tech platforms. It becomes an issue because it's like a more commercial thing. So it's like, okay, like basically the bigger you are in Canada, the more of a target you're going to have on your back for the CRTC to with you. For a bunch of nonsense of like, hey, you didn't have enough Canadian people in your video, or you use stock video from a non-Canadian, who knows? And I gotta say, I mean, many people have probably talked about this already, but like, there's no way the CRTC is equipped to like do this properly. Like, I'm calling
I don't think there's a way to do it properly. Yeah, I don't think there's a way to do it properly. I think that
good point.
It is used solely to target people.
So we have a Pepe meme here. He's wearing a lumberjack hat. Now, is that Canadiana? Are we calling the lumberjack? He's got plaid on the hat. Is that a
Canadian frog?
Hat?
It's a Canadian frog.
Let's see who made Pepe. Pepe is from North Dakota, but one of his parents was Canadian. So let's see here. Oh, and he was using I was a Canadian server website that he was using at the time.
There was maple syrup in the that'll be that. I'm interested because there was a proposal, and I don't know which country the proposal was, but if you had meme making material, then you could be jailed, or there could be a legal consequence if you were undermining the government's authority or something.
Yeah. I do think the kind of short-sightedness and just like big-headedness of the C11 legislation kind of represents a big sort of framework of what's going on in the world, which is like, no offense, I'm going to use the B word, but a lot of like powerful baby boomers who just have no idea how the internet works, trying to like impose their power. And it's like, dude, dad, like, just let me set it up. Let me do it for
Yelling
you.
at the
Like you
computer
don't
is
know.
not going to change
I
it.
know you don't know how to use your email. Like, okay, I'll empty your phone of the storage. I'll do it for you.
Mhm.
It's someone like that who's like, well, I'm gonna make all these rules about how you can and can't use cell phones, and it's like,
Yeah.
face
It's
palm,
like
like,
Joe Biden making
bro.
those rules. I mean, like,
Like,
so
yeah, that's good. Yeah,
it's not,
it's like,
but I see
yeah.
you forget. I grew up in the era of my grandmother had my parents bought my grandmother a VCR so she could record The Young and the Restless. Do you think
Nice.
that anybody could ever set the clock on that infernal VCR? Nobody ever. It sat on top of the TV. I don't think it was ever plugged in. I don't think like it was plugged in and it flashed and people would set it up and then the power would go out and that was that. Couldn't use it anymore. So like
Yeah. I mean,
going
hey,
through the VCR era, I knew when phones started becoming a thing, I was like, oh man, there's going to be a whole cottage industry of helping people figure out these infernal phones. How do I
yeah.
program this thing?
Hey, I was still of the era at one point near the end of public school there. If we had to make videos, we would like record it from like one VHS to another. Like the
Yeah.
editing was like so archaic. It
Yep.
was crazy.
Yeah. Man. Yeah. Communication technology has come a long way, but it, it's a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is the speed with which you can disseminate cool and videos like the bandwidth. You can have a video like this. You and I are talking now and this will be out later on today and people are very happy about that, so you can distribute, you can do all sorts of crazy stuff, but you can also put together a really flashy lie. You can put together a really convincing video that looks real and people would look at it and think that's real and they wouldn't look into it further, right? So
Yeah.
there's it cuts both
The
ways.
propaganda becomes more powerful with the technology.
It
Absolutely.
does. It
Yeah.
does. So, okay, we've got Brazil to talk about in the Emergencies Act, and we don't have very much time. Let's talk about Brazil quick, and then we'll talk about emergencies.
Okay.
Or do you want to just talk about
Let's just
emergencies?
go to emergencies. I
Emergencies.
mean,
Jeremy,
another election happens, another potentially fraudulent thing
WEF puppet. Yeah.
happens, and then another,
Okay.
can't talk about it. Don't talk about it. Anyway,
Right.
moving
Yeah.
on.
Okay. Yeah, that was Venezuela. Moving on to Emergencies Act. So Jeremy McKenzie is number 33. I realized somebody was talking about how Jeremy McKenzie is going to be testifying. And I honestly thought that they put him in jail to keep him away from this thing. I thought they were going to say, oh, I can't talk to Jeremy. He's in jail. So Jeremy McKenzie is going to be testifying. I think he's going to be under a publication ban. Like I heard that they weren't going to be publishing the things that he says. So that's interesting.
Definitely.
Chris Barber was on the stand this morning. They're talking to the leadership this week. Last week was all OPP. What do you think? Have you been watching?
I haven't been watching super closely. I've been seeing some pretty good clips, which I've definitely been enjoying. And yeah, I mean it's very polarized, isn't it? Like it's either you are a Ottawa public servant or adjacent to that.
Yeah.
And you're grasping at all of the horrible things that happened. It's mostly hearsay. It's mostly my emotions, my feelings.
Yep.
And then there's like a bunch of like strange allusions to like awful things that happened that like no one has video evidence of, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
And then you have the other side of people who are just like, really wasn't that violent at all. Yeah. And it's just so frustrating. Like part of the reason why I don't watch it is like I really don't have the patience. Like I have enough holes in my drywall already. Like I don't think I need to put myself through this of just people just lying and just the absolute contempt attitude. And why can't we just talk about how the mandates are not even justified? That's the whole reason the protest even happened.
Yep.
And this is just another opportunity of how this popular Canadian conversation about the EMA hearing, where we're not going to talk about how the unjustified mandates.
Yeah. So I think like you hit on a bunch of really important things, but I think that the core of this is that we are doing everything we can to talk around the central issue. And the central issue is, was the legal threshold met to enact the Emergencies Act legislation? If not, was it improperly acted? And having Zexi Leon to talk about how her apartment was noisy, I just don't think that's a national emergency. I just don't think so. And when OPP and countless OPP officers say we had the tools necessary to do this, the Emergencies Act gave us extra tools, I guess, but we could have done this without that. It seems like there was no actual reason other than Justin Trudeau's own propaganda that made them think that there was a national threat. And then they, afraid of their own shadow, did something stupid, which, I mean, if you look at our economy, if you look at anything that these liberals are in charge of, they've done a ton of stupid things over and over and over again.
Absolutely. And the clips from this EMA hearing are quite gold. And it really is, it's an echoing of what happened during the convoy. Is like, we're really seeing how corrupt and incompetent these people are, and how they're really focused on driving a narrative instead of actually telling the truth. And, you have these, you have police chiefs crying about the cold, literally crying about how cold, like citing cold weather as like how awful it was. You have another police chief
I'm pretty sure
saying the term community violence, and then just like kind of just like skirting along.
Not the
and
criminal
can
code
explain...
code level of violence. Yeah.
No, and
the
it's
feeling
like,
of violence.
What needs to be emphasized, I think, to Canadians is we need to really like get more upset, actually, because if this were happening in America, if you had police officers
America,
like
they wouldn't do it though, because the police officers, because the towns are a little smaller. Like, we've got bigger cities with the bureaucratic police officers, like a bureaucratic police system.
No, but I'm talking more about just the moral outrage that Americans would have for these police officers talking about community violence. And like, there's this sort of worship that Americans have of the law. And
but
rules.
They had the
and
defund
if you
police and all that too. They had that whole defund police, and Black Lives Matter was born from the defund police.
No, but still, I'm not talking about the brainwashed masses in the States. I'm talking about like the patriots, bro. I'm talking about like the fiery patriots down there who are like, they would not stand for this.
I think
despicable. It's a despicable insult to like.
There's a lot of things that are happening that people are not standing for, but they are happening because there isn't an effective way to fight back against it. But I wanted to talk about the cold weather very quickly.
But I think part of the fight is to be morally outraged. And
I agree with you, but there are people who are like, there's a fight or flight, and
intensity rising.
There's a fight or flight response. And when there's no obvious way to fight, people run away, or they disengage, or they just say, well, I can't do anything about that. And maybe rightly so. They can't do anything about it. So why engage with it? But on the police officer saying that it was cold, there were Canadian truckers painted up. I think there were people wearing like just body paint on trucks, doing a street part, like in the middle of the night, doing a massive street party, because that happened.
But just to kind of like add to your point, everything that local Ottawa people are complaining about, the people who are among the convoy had to endure to an even more extreme degree. The honking, I was right there getting honks, especially the first weekend was crazy.
Yeah.
The cold. Yeah, I was there too. But aside from that, it's like, there's all this, like, you know what? I'll invent a term here. There's talking about phantom honking. You know what the police are talking about too? Phantom violence. Where is it? Where is the violence? Where is this phantom hatred, this phantom violence? Hey, did you see the violence? There's community violence. Ooh, what was it? What is it? Is it there? Can you touch it? No, you're just gonna like, it's some phantom, some it's like, it was like it was never there.
Well, it's all about a narrative. It's all about a narrative. And it's super interesting for me that the narrative is so strong. You've got the prime minister, you've got like prime minister and the PMO concocting ways to brand the protest in a specific way. And you've got the speechwriter of the prime minister saying this group of fringe minority people with fringe beliefs, that became a galvanizing call for people, because Justin Trudeau was so far out of touch. But they just went with it. They just continued. And it doesn't look like there's going to be a whole lot of accountability. Like my prediction, we're going to do your prediction and then we got to go. My prediction for this is there's not going to be any kind of real consequence at the end of this whole thing. I think that the options for consequence are $500 fine, literal slap on the wrist for Justin Trudeau, or the nuclear option, an election. Do you think any of the, what do you think? I think nothing or nothing.
I think that despite the hypocrisy and the incompetence that we see at this EMA hearing, I don't think that freedom fighters realize that they are kind of doing what they always do, which is pile on lies after lies after lies. Then with that, they create headline after headline after headline, and then they get to drive whatever narrative they want through the Canadians' throats. And I think that the lies that they're building, worst case scenario, is yes, let's make legislation to make sure this never happens again. Because they can do something where like, oh, maybe the EMA wasn't justified, but I fear that they're going to segue into, oh, well, we need to make sure that a protest like this never happens again. And then now they're making some weird legislation where you can't protest the federal government unless it's like a BLM protest, unless it's like one of the state approved protests. That's where it's going, I think. And that's
a good one. I
worst
like
case.
that.
No, that's worst case scenario. And you can already see that they're
plausible, man.
They're sprinkling in all the little breadcrumbs, all the little lies for them to build up. And I got to say, just the final note, which is kind of like an uplifting one. It is so sweet to see these police officers, to hear these Ottawa politicians say, there was just so many of them. It was just so big. It was so large and massive, and we couldn't believe it, and we needed more people to help. And it's like, fucking right. Yeah, it was pretty big, wasn't it? You guys didn't know what to do, did you? It wasn't a fringe minority. Can we talk about the mandates, please? Or no, we're just going to talk about how this can never happen again. Yeah, so I'm really not reassured because that's where I fear worst case scenario where it might be headed.
Yeah, I think it's a good call. I think that if I were to use this crisis and not let it go to waste, I would certainly be looking to create legislation. And yeah, I think it provides good cover, and with the right language, it's like passing the Patriot Act or whatever, right? People are blinded by like, oh, it sounds good. No, it's the Freedom Act, right? Yeah.
Dude, this country is so lame. Today they mentioned Tyler Russell, Jeremy McKenzie, Derek Harrison, and Alex Vriend, aka the Ferryman's Toll, some memester. And it's like, it's so lame that this is supposed to be our J6, and these are supposed to be our terrorists.
Do you think? Do you think that we're on a
I got mentioned? I got mentioned for not being able to talk to Randy Hillier, man. I was on the list of.
See, and like I mean, did you look through the OPP? There was an OPP thing. I really have to go, but there was an OPP thing that they were distributing around the convoy, and it had Jeremy McKenzie, and it had all those people.
That was the lamest thing I've ever seen.
It was super lame, right?
That was so stupid.
It is meant to throw you off. You know what I mean? Like if you saw your name on there, right, you'd be like, "Whoa, what the heck?" Right? It is. It's,
it's an intimidation tactic for sure.
Right?
And it's the same thing of building all of the lies. And it's like, wow, based on all these lies, you're a horrible person. And it's like, well, none of that's
true. It's true. Yeah.
Like it's phantom violence. It's phantom terrorism. It's like phantom hate and white supremacy. It's like, it's all just made up. And I was just going to say, like, the fact that they're mentioning all these people who are pretty well all my friends, it's like, what did they do? They said some things online that you disagree with.
Yep.
And they have an audience, and people think they're funny.
Yep.
That's the problem. These are our terrorists in Canada.
Criminals.
Being charming and funny right wingers. That's the crime. And then
they're also attractive.
Together. Then they're handsome as well. Very true.
Creepers. So charismatic. I think you nailed it, dude. Where can they find you?
Watch my new music video, They Lie, on my YouTube channel, Greg Wycliffe. That's the only thing that matters right now. I'm also on Facebook as well, PPC Greg, but that's where the video is as well. But go watch that music video. I worked very, very hard on it. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Awesome. It's always nice to talk to you, man. And you can catch my stuff at CanadaPoly.com and all the other places you watch me. And thanks for watching, everybody. We'll catch you next time.